You feel it sometimes? This quiet, nagging sense that other people have something you don't. That they're more confident, more capable, more put together. And you look at your own life and think, why can't I just be enough? That sounds familiar? Stay with me. Because what you're feeling has a name. It's been studied for over a century. And most importantly, there's a way out of it that doesn't involve forcing yourself to think positive thoughts you don't believe. This video is about the psychology of feeling inferior, where it actually comes from, why it affects some people so deeply, and what you can do practically, quietly, without performing confidence you don't have to stop letting it run your life. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Every single human being on this planet has felt inferior at some point. Not just you. Not just people who have issues. Everyone. Psychologists don't treat inferiority as a sign that something is wrong with you. They treat it as part of the human condition. We are born helpless, dependent, small. We spend our entire childhood watching adults do things we can't do. We are constantly measured, graded, compared. The feeling of not being enough isn't a glitch. It's almost an inevitable byproduct of growing up human. But here's where it gets interesting. That same feeling, that ache of I'm not there yet, is also one of the most powerful engines of human growth ever identified. The problem isn't feeling inferior. The problem is what happens when that feeling gets stuck. When inferiority stops being a signal and becomes an identity. Think about what that looks like in real life. It's the person who never raises their hand in a meeting even when they have a brilliant idea. Because what if someone thinks it's stupid? It's the person who avoids relationships because they already assume they'll be rejected. It's the person who scrolls through other people's lives online and feels a slow, heavy sinking in their chest. It's the person who works twice as hard as everyone else but still secretly believes they're about to be found out. Sound familiar? These aren't personality flaws. They're coping strategies. Strategies that made sense at some point, probably when you were young and genuinely had less power. Less experience, less control. The mind learned, if I stay small, I stay safe. If I don't try, I can't fail. If I criticize myself first, no one else can hurt me. And for a while, it worked. The trouble is, the mind doesn't automatically update that strategy when you grow up. It keeps running the old code. Even when you're 35 years old and perfectly capable of handling criticism. Even when the people around you actually respect you. The old protective system keeps firing, keeps telling you you're not enough. Don't risk it, stay back. Here's a phrase worth holding on to. Your feelings about yourself were formed in conditions that no longer exist. Read that again. The version of you who first learned to feel small, they were responding to something real. A critical parent. It's a humiliating experience. It's a period of life where you genuinely weren't capable yet. But you're not that person anymore. And the world around you is not that situation anymore. You've been living in the present while navigating with a map drawn in the past. Now, here's something that often gets overlooked. Inferiority and arrogance are not opposites. They're roommates. This is one of the most counterintuitive insights in psychology, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. The person who constantly talks about their achievements, who needs to be the smartest in the room, who gets defensive at the slightest critique, that person is not someone with high self-esteem. They're someone working overtime to cover a deep sense of not being enough. The armor is thick, but the wound underneath is the same. And this matters because it means that chasing superiority, trying to be better than, more successful than, more respected than, doesn't actually solve the problem. It just gives it a more socially acceptable costume. So what actually helps? The first thing is something deceptively simple. You have to stop treating the feeling as evidence. When you feel inferior, your brain presents that feeling as information. You feel worthless, therefore you are worthless. But feelings aren't facts. They're signals, often very old signals, running on very old data. The feeling of being less than is not proof that you are less than. It's proof that something, somewhere, at some point, made you believe that. The practice here is not to argue with the feeling, not to suppress it, but to observe it with a slight distance. To notice, there it is again, that old familiar weight. And then ask, what is this actually responding to right now? Is this situation genuinely dangerous? Or does it just remind me of something that was? Often you'll find there's no real threat. The feeling is a ghost, powerful, vivid, but not attached to anything in the present room. The second thing is about comparison, and this one is crucial. Inferiority almost always lives inside comparison. I am less than them. I don't measure up to that. But comparison is a rigged game, and here's why. You are always comparing your interior to someone else's exterior. You see their highlight reel, their polished LinkedIn bio, their confident presentation, their beautiful home, and you compare it to your blooper reel, your doubts, your failures, your messy inner life. Of course, you come up short. Everyone would. You're not comparing equivalent things. The person whose career you envy goes home and lies awake, wondering if they made the right choices. The person whose relationship looks perfect has conversations behind closed doors that you'll never see. Not because everyone is secretly miserable, but because everyone is privately human. Everyone has a back room. When you understand this, comparison doesn't disappear overnight, but it loosens its grip. You start to see it for what it is, a trick the mind plays to confirm a story it already believes. The third thing, and this might be the most important, is to shift the question from, am I enough? To, am I growing? The first question has no stable answer. It's because enough is a moving target. Reach one level and the bar shifts. Impress one group of people, and you find yourself in a room with another group. The question itself is designed to keep you running without arriving. But am I growing? That's a question you can actually answer. Did I handle that difficult conversation better than I would have 6 months ago? Do I understand something today that I didn't understand last year? Did I try something I was afraid of, even if it didn't go perfectly? Growth doesn't require being better than anyone else. It only requires being more than you were. And that is something you have complete control over. There's a quiet kind of freedom that comes with this shift. You stop needing external validation to feel okay. You stop needing to be the best in the room. You just need to be honest with yourself about whether you're moving forward, learning, becoming more of who you actually want to be. This doesn't mean you'll never feel inferior again. You will. Probably tomorrow. But the feeling will visit differently. Less like a verdict and more like weather. It passes through. It doesn't define the landscape. One last thing before we close. The people you admire most, the ones who seem genuinely confident, genuinely at ease with themselves, they are not people who never doubt themselves. They are people who have learned not to treat their doubts as the final word. They feel the weight and they move anyway, quietly, without fanfare. Not because they've conquered fear, but because they've stopped waiting for it to disappear before they begin. You don't need to fix yourself before you start living. You don't need to arrive at some perfect level of self-esteem before you're allowed to take up space. You are already in the middle of becoming someone. That process is allowed to be messy, uncertain, and still completely worth it. The feeling of inferiority told you that you weren't enough to be here. It was wrong. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who might need it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. There's plenty more where this came from. See you soon for more content.